Welcome back to the thrilling conclusion of the gatekeeping job. Before we dive in, I want to express my heartfelt gratitude for your incredible support and captivating comments. You make this channel what it is. You are truly amazing. Now, you must be wondering, what did Mr. Solomon Okpani whisper? What could have left him trembling with fear? Was it the ghost of his ancestors? Or perhaps an ex-girlfriend he jilted years ago? The truth is far darker and more disappointing. Finally, he leaned in, his voice barely audible. I lied. My heart skipped a beat. You lied, I thought, as 1,000 scenarios raced through my mind. What did you lie about? I asked, my voice heavy with anticipation. Solomon confessed that even his name wasn't real. He never gave his real name to anyone, especially not to people preaching or inviting him to church. If pressed, he gave a fake name, and the same went for his phone number. He had given me a false one to avoid being contacted. This deception explained why we couldn't reach him to inform him about the interview and help him prepare. At the interview, his lies unraveled. The name on his documents didn't match the one recommended. The interviewers weren't just confused, they were suspicious. His explanations fell flat and they asked him to leave. I was left stunned, a mix of anger and disappointment churning inside me. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind, a whirlwind of thoughts. How could I have been so easily deceived? Then, as if on cue, my phone rang. It was my cousin, Mr. Onje. My heart pounded as I stared at the screen. I didn't want to answer, but the phone kept ringing. Finally, I picked up. He greeted me, but I could hear the disappointment in his voice. He berated me for letting someone fool us all. I apologized, and by the end of the call, the anger had dissipated, and we laughed over everything. After that incident, I occasionally bumped into Mr. Solomon. Despite everything that happened, I still encouraged him, reminding him that mistakes are lessons in disguise, if only we are wise enough to learn from them. It's been a year now, and Mr. Solomon still hasn't found even a minimal job. He's been surviving on the support of friends and relatives. One Saturday evening, around 5 p.m., I decided to attend a youth event at my new church. The event was a love feast and a seminar titled Be Wise to Utilize Opportunities Positively. I thought it might be a good chance to help Mr. Solomon, so I tried to call him, but his phone was off. I volunteered as an usher, standing by the entrance of the auditorium. Suddenly, a car horn blared outside. The gatekeeper was away, so one of the brothers went to check. Moments later, he returned, his face lit with excitement. The gate swung open and a sleek brand new Camry Spider glided in and parked. As the car pulled up, I assumed it was just another youth arriving. But when the youth leader and others walked towards it excitedly, I realized it had to be the guest minister. When the driver stepped out, my heart skipped a beat. It was Brother Tim, the gatekeeper. He looked completely transformed, dressed sharply in a suit, a far cry from his usual modest appearance. Before I could fully process it, a sister asked me for direction, distracting me. By the time I turned back, the parking lot was empty and everyone had already gone inside. I assumed the guest minister was already seated, as everyone was calm and quiet. The youth leader took the pulpit, welcomed everyone, and then said, "With great joy, let's welcome our guest speaker, Pastor Timothy. Pastor Tim, as many of you know him." The room erupted in applause as Brother Tim was introduced as the guest minister. I stood frozen in disbelief, covering my mouth in shock, realizing that he was no longer just the gatekeeper or driver I thought him to be, but a pastor. Pastor Tim took the mic, his presence commanding the hall. With joy and love in our hearts, worship in our spirits, praise on our lips, and applause in our hands, let's welcome the Most High God, he said, leading us in worship and praise. After a short prayer, he delivered his message on the topic. The meeting was brief but powerful. As he was getting into his car, one of the youth rushed to open the gate for Pastor Tim to drive out. Watching him with other youths as he left, I voiced out, "Everything about Pastor Tim feels surreal, like a film trick, but the truth remains, it's a miracle." One of the youths reminded us, God said, if we serve him, he would bless our bread and water and take sickness away from our midst. Another added, yes, God has blessed his diligent work and taken suffering away from him. And I said, Pastor Tim once opened the gate for members. Now members are opening the gate for him. On that note, we parted ways. So at home that night, my mind kept replaying the events of the evening. Is this how diligence in small beginnings can transform someone's life? I wondered until I fell asleep. A week later, I called Pastor Tim. As we spoke, he shared his incredible journey with passion, especially his mission to help other youths, just as he had once been helped. Midway through our conversation, he mentioned a gatekeeping position at the church headquarters, specifically for graduates. Gatekeeping for graduates? I asked, surprised. Yes, Pastor Tim replied. If I hadn't been a graduate, I wouldn't have risen to this level. You never know where it might lead. As soon as he mentioned the job, Mr. Sampson's face flashed in my mind. I couldn't wait to tell him about the opportunity. After my conversation with Pastor Tim ended, I picked up my phone to call Mr. Sampson, eager to give him the news. I knew that even the cooks at the church were well paid. This could be a great opportunity for Mr. Sampson if he got the job. When he answered, I asked him to meet me outside the estate gate with his CV. 5 minutes later, he showed up, full of anxiety and hope. I checked the CV thoroughly. No mistakes this time. The moment I mentioned the gatekeeping job, his face twisted in disbelief. What? He blurted out, almost as if he had been insulted. That's the job you found for me? No way. Absolutely not. He grabbed the CV from my hand, his face contorted with a mix of shock and fury. I was stunned, unable to speak. He explained that his mother had warned him sternly never to take a gatekeeping job, and that she did not train him in school to end up opening gates for people. Frustration bubbled within me, threatening to spill over. I took a deep breath, trying to maintain my composure. Mr. Sampson, I began, my voice tight with restraint. What did you study in school? He straightened up, almost puffing out his chest. Marketing, he declared, as if that single word held all the answers. Marketing, I repeated, my tone laced with biting sarcasm. Perfect. Since you're so well versed in marketing, there are plenty of markets here in Makurdi. I'm sure the tomato sellers are desperate for someone with your qualification. And if not, perhaps the firewood sellers could use your expertise. I watched as the confidence drained from his face. The silence that followed was suffocating. My words hanging in the air. The meeting was over. There was no need for pleasantries. I left him to ponder his next move.